All right, so we're going to continue. And with this, so like I said, reading is one of the first things that kiddos are doing in school. In life, unfortunately, you can't get by without being able to read. Everything from stop signs to street lights, everything in between, everything is derived around reading. And so by continuing to instill the exciting events with reading, whether it's going to the library or reading outside or tying in spelling unknown words, things like that can really help kids understand that reading is really exciting rather than, like I said, a chore. So we're first going to start off and go through each different part of reading. And we're first going to start off with phonics. Phonics is one of the areas where even if your kiddo is in high school, middle school, wherever, if they're struggling with reading or they just don't like to read, chances are it's because they have a little bit of an area that they need more support in one of these 5 areas. So I want to explain all of them so that way you understand and can think about your kiddo in specific to how you can help them and what area they may need more support with. So in the English language, everybody knows that we have 26 letters. However, there's 44 sounds. So you're almost looking at double the sounds for the letters. And there's over 100 ways to spell those sounds. And so English, I'm sure you've heard, is one of the most complex languages to learn and read, let alone spell. And so reading and spelling go hand in hand. If you can't read the word, of course, you're not going to be able to spell it correctly either. And so tying them together really helps kids understand the meanings of words and how to spell the words later on in life. So like I said, phonics is a method for teaching reading and writing. So it helps develop phonemic awareness, which is what we'll talk about next, which is the ability to hear, recognize, and use the sounds within words. So learners are also taught how sounds and graphemes, which is how words are spelled, so vowel pairs, all sorts of things that we'll talk about later, how to represent them. And so phonics is taught from pretty much when kiddos are being able to talk and walk and move. You're talking to them, you're trying to get them to increase their vocabulary, reading books to them, and just trying to, like I said, get them more encouraged and excited about reading. So in reading, there's a ton of vocabulary that looking at it, you would have no idea what it means. So I wanted to just quickly, like I said, talk about what these words mean. So that way, when we go through them, you understand and have a baseline information of what I'm talking about. So phonics, like I said, we just talked about is how the sounds and words and how to represent those sounds with letters. Phonemes, there's 44 sounds, like I told you, and those words which make up the words in the English language. Graphemes, those are the ones that we call them tricky words or tricky spelling. So those are vowel teams like AY, magic E, IGH, all of those. So that way, like I said, all of the letters have different sounds. And so if you don't teach all of the great important parts of reading and spelling, you're not going to be able to read it, let alone understand what that word means. Blending is when you're putting together sounds in a word, so sounding it out. And then segmenting is when you have a word and you break it into the corresponding sounds. English we teach it as a code. And so in school, your children are learning to not only, like I said, read it, but write. And so when you're teaching children or working with your kiddo, what you're doing is you're trying to teach them essentially how to code. You're coding the English language and you're trying to figure out different spellings, how words are taught, and how to make sounds go together to make a word. There's a huge number, like I told you, of phonemes that most kiddos struggle with right out of the gate, usually kindergarten through 2nd grade, just because their brains are still getting into the swing of school. So if your kiddo is maybe having a harder time with reading or understanding sounds, they might need more support with their phonemes. And so that would just be breaking up words into sounds, giving them words, practicing different things like that. So like I said, these are like basic phonemes in English language. And it's imperative and super duper important to practice identifying the letters and their sounds with your kiddo. And as silly as it may seem, a lot of parents think that kiddos will just absorb that information right away and they'll be able to identify it. And our English language, there's multiple different letters like P, B, D, and Q, all of these different letters that kids will flip and say the different sounds for. And so it's really important to just over and over go through the letters and the sounds and just make sure that your children know all of them. Even if it's vowel teams, like these ones in yellow on the right-hand side of the picture. With middle school and high school, a lot of bigger children, they have a harder time with reading because of the yellow areas. The yellow areas are one of the areas in the English language that some children going through school either pick up really quick, or it's an area that they don't pick up quickly. And so unfortunately, if they don't pick it up really quickly, they're going to get really frustrated with reading. They're not going to want to do it. And you're going to be pulling teeth and trying to get them to read for their homework or whatever it may be. And so there's different ways that I'll talk about to help instill the yellow parts while going through reading and making it enjoyable. Like I said, children are normally taught phonics in a very structured way. And so I'll go through the different phases of how children learn, phonics, letters, sounds, all of that. And so if children are taught phonics and their parents at home are working with them as well, and even just making sure that they're up to speed, they know all of these things, all of the vowel teams and everything that I'll continue to talk about. If they are 100% accuracy on it, their confidence and accuracy with reading is going to shoot up and go through the roof. And it's really important that while a person can read accurately and fluently, they might not have the confidence to want to read and share with others. And so by having not only accuracy and fluency, it's important to make sure that they're confident in themselves while reading. Because if you teach confidence that they can do it, it will help them know that even if you're not there or they're at school or wherever they may be, if somebody asks them to tell them about the story or things like that, that they are able to do that. Then phonics, like I mentioned, is normally taught daily throughout school. Doesn't matter, kindergarten through 12th grade, there's phonics taught all the time. Any new word a person learns, they will normally sound it out, or before they know completely and they have mastered all of their sounds, then it's easier for them to understand and follow through with reading it. And so with them learning it daily in school, it just helps them realize that phonics is something that they will use every day, no matter what they're doing. The great thing about reading is that it can be adapted and changed in so many different ways that people don't normally think about. And so, like I said, my background, I try to do as many fun things, games, group activities, all sorts of different activities and events to get them excited where they don't realize that they're reading. They're playing a game, or they're being told that they're gonna play bingo or something after with the facts that they've learned. Listening skills, while you wouldn't realize that they connect to reading, if you are having a harder time with your listening skills, whether that's doing chores around the house or picking up the toys or anything like that, listening skills are very, very important because it helps teach kids that throughout listening and paying attention, that they're going to understand and be able to realize what their expectation is and how they can get there. So without these skills, they may also struggle with mastering the next stage. And so we're going to talk about the different phases that kids go through quickly. So that way you have a baseline of different stages that your children may be in with reading, so you can help each of your kids in the specific areas that they need. The letters and sounds. So letters and sounds is a resource, and it's a resource that parents are able to access online as well. Letters and Sounds is a resource of teaching phonics that was issued by the Department of Education in 2007. And so if you go online and you type in letters and sounds, what you'll find is you'll find pinpointed worksheets, explanations, different things like that to help primary school children mostly, but there is also middle school and high school worksheets as well, to provide the necessary support that they need through their education. So phase one, typically children begin to develop listening skills and the environmental skills throughout their preschooling career. If they go through to preschool, or if they don't go to preschool, normally they figure out all of these skills through talking with mom and dad, going to the grocery store, running errands, things like that, just so that way they are able to start their receptive and their reception of understanding complex words, understanding what people are asking of them, so on and so forth. So phase one has 7 different aspects that we focus on. Phase one is environmental sounds. So kids are able to identify that they hear a fire truck or a police car. They're able to identify a dump truck, anything like that. They're able to identify birds, anything outside. Instrumental sounds is another thing, so they can figure out that banging on a pot makes a sound like a drum, and they can do all sorts of things to explore their body in their like motor vehicle or a motor. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on their motor skills. The next one is body percussion. So clapping, anything like that, making sounds with their mouth, things like, and so the number 4 is rhythm and rhyme. So nursery rhymes, asking what word rhymes with cat, dog, things like that. Alliteration, so any word sentences that have all of the same letter at the beginning. So like Allie the alligator is always a big one that most people go to because it's just easy and comes off real quick. Voice sounds, they're able to identify different sounds, so they know that the difference between mom's voice, dad's voice, grandparents, aunts, uncles, all of family members, friends. Oral blending is and segmenting is the next one. So this one will come with time. This number 7 segues into phase 2. So if your child hasn't fully mastered phase 7 of number 1, it's not a make or break. They're going to still get the practice with this skill throughout the next phases. In phase 2, children begin to learn some letter sounds that match to grapheme. So at this point, they're able to read tricky words that are easy, like I, to, go, easy vowel consonant words. And from that point, they'll then step into consonant vowel. Most of the sounds are single letter sounds in the English alphabet. There's also several digraphs or double letter words like CK, LL, SS, W, or FF, so on and so forth. If you look down at the bottom of this picture, and there'll be a bigger one on this next slide. These are generally the basic sounds that are taught in phase 2. So you can take a quick look. Some of them, like the double letters, at that point in time in phase 2, they're just able to enunciate those sounds. They're not actually spelling the double consonant letters. So this is the bigger version of the sound map that goes through all the different sounds. They pinpoint the different sounds on the sound mats based on sounds that kids are exposed to the most. So they're exposed to apple and things that they see predominantly, whether it's their hands, flowers, birds. They're able to identify a picture that supports the beginning sound of that. Phase 3 usually lasts around 12 weeks. And so this is when they're taught about 25 graphemes, or like I said, different sounds. And so the final letter sounds are taught together more as a consonant digraphs, whereas several vowel digraphs are taught at a longer time. Normally, children will pick up consonant digraphs much quicker than vowel digraphs. Vowel digraphs are very, very difficult for a lot of kids to understand because there's so many words in our English language that don't follow the sounds of vowel digraphs. And so for kids to be able to understand that there's multiple different sounds for multiple digraphs, that can be a very difficult task for some to understand. Then children will move from phase 3 into phase 4. And that at this point, they'll be able to blend and segment 2-syllable words. So they're able to sound out words like eating, present, things like that, where they're able to sound them out and be able to identify the letters that correspond to those sounds. At this point, tricky words or sight words are continually being taught at home, at school. Any extra reinforcement on sight words is extremely beneficial to making kids excited about reading, because once they have the feeling that they have accomplished understanding the word, they can realize that they can do it and encourage themselves without getting down on them. This is, like I said, the bigger version of the sound mat. And these, I put these in the slides so that way it's easier for parents to print them out, screenshot them however you want. So that way you have access to these. Phase 4. So phase 4 is one of the biggest phases that kids will go through. And this is another area where even with high school kids, some kids have a hard time understanding that basic beginning consonants like ST, SP, WR, things, double consonants like those will change their sounds. And so it's important that when we are working with kids, even in high school, I had a kiddo that I tutored, and he was a high schooler back when I was in college. And when he was in high school, he could not, for the life of him, no matter how hard he tried, he could not just look at 3 consonants together and be able to identify that sound. So for example, the sound SPR in spring, he would sound out every single letter instead of just identifying the SPR and the sound that it makes. And so these different double consonants and vowel tricks that the English language has made can be very, very overwhelming. And so reading is not a race. It's structured so that way over time, kids can fully understand it. And so if your child is, like I said, having a harder time, it's important to just take a breath and take a step back and just focus on them and encouraging them. If they are wanting to read nonfiction books, so anything that is real, but they keep getting pushed fiction books at school or things like that. Trying to encourage what excites them in their reading will help them with their confidence, help them with their reading, their writing, their word knowledge, their vocabulary, all of the important areas. Phase 5. So this is towards the end. There's like in phase 5. So they are learning alternative ways of spelling. So more vowel teams. This is where it starts to get even more tricky with vowel teams because you're looking at EW, OE, AU, AY, OU. And for most children to be able to understand all of those sounds, it takes years. I've been teaching first grade. I did reading intervention for a little while, and it has been a very difficult task for a lot of kids to understand and recognize all of the sounds in the English language in only 1 year. And so just realizing that it takes a lot of time, and it will come with time the more you practice with your children. So in June or May, depending on when your children get out of school, children are normally expected to complete a phonics screening check, and this is normally done in kindergarten and first grade, and it just helps to identify, diagraph specific areas that your children may be struggling in. And so if your school or if your child is in kindergarten or first grade, it's super important to always ask the teacher for a phonics check-in. This can help parents at home realize specific areas that they need more support with. So for example, if you look at the little picture, if your children or your child is struggling with R-controlled vowels, number 6, you're able to know that that's an area that you can practice with at home. So asking your child's teacher about specific areas that they may need support with will drastically help. Phase 6 and beyond. So this is normally taught through second grade or beginning of second grade. And so this is the stage where children are becoming more fluent readers and accurate spellers. At this point in time in their education career, you may see spelling tests, all sorts of vocabulary things, practicing, building words, things like that coming home from school. And so that stuff is specifically gauged and geared towards spelling patterns, being able to identify vowel teams and all of the words automatically. And so, like I said, reading is not a race and it goes through over time. However, being able to realize that reading is for pleasure rather than a chore or forcing them to read will really help them understand actually more words. The more kids are excited about reading, spelling, being engaged, they're going to learn more vocabulary, which will help them with understanding reading when it comes to retelling stories.
Shelby, we've got a comment and a question in the chat.
Perfect.
One of the comments is a parent notes that her kiddos learn to read at really different ages. So some were reading well before age 5 and some are still chopping through at 7 and after.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, so that is completely normal. Most kids, like I said, I've been teaching first grade. I taught first grade for 4 years. I taught second grade for a year. And so I've seen kids in a whole wide range of areas. And so if your child is still struggling, what I would do, like I said, is reach out to your parent or your child's teacher and just say, I want to work with my child at home. So that way they can overcome this area. And teachers, what they'll do is they will make sure that you have all of the tools, whether it's an explanation of different areas that your kid needs support with or activities to do with them at home. Teachers will want to help your kiddo as much as humanly possible. And so just being able to come together as a team is really where reading in your children's education makes a huge, huge difference. So with that, if your kiddo, and we'll talk more as we go through the slides, about different milestones is what they call them, that your children should go through. And if your child doesn't go through them at that stage, that's okay. As long as they're within a year or two, it's nothing to be extremely concerned about.
Thank you. And then there's just been some questions about different resources. So it sounds like you'll address that some more. Some other families are throwing some ideas out there.
Yes.
It sounds like that you could probably administer that like that test to your kiddos at home.
Yes. So I have a bunch of resources that I'll go through for each specific area of reading. And so yes, a bunch of resources. You can Google, like everybody knows, just about anything. And so what you can do, and I can help with keywords, things like that. So that way you can help search for specific areas or things, worksheets, assessments to do at home with your children, things like that to help them more.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So here we are, some tools to help your child. So with phonics specifically, reading with your children every night, practicing letter sounds, letter names, like I mentioned, breaking part of words into sounds. So taking words like charm, sounding it out, building words. When you're building words and breaking words into sounds, a fun thing for most kids to do is, and it sounds really messy. It's not that bad, I promise, parents. So what you do is you get a baking sheet, and you can go to the dollar store, wherever, and get a can of shaving cream. And if you cover the whole pan with shaving cream and you say words, your kid can practice actually spelling them or breaking them up into sounds that go with the word. And so anything that kids can do that gets them, even if it's the littlest bit messy, they think it's the most exciting thing for most kiddos. Now, I've used beads for kids that have sensory, where they don't like the feel of shaving cream. That's totally fine. You can use beads, pipe cleaners, honestly, just about anything. My students have used so many different things, paper, just so that way they can practice more and do more things to excite them. And then practicing sight words. Sight words are a huge thing for kids K through 5 and even older. Sight words are a huge thing to just be able to look at it and know it rather than having to sound it out. And that will help with your children or your child's ability to read accurately and fluently. Some resources to help your child. One that I didn't put on here is Epic. Epic is, you can have a membership. Epic is great. You can have audiobooks, there's videos, there's regular stories you can read with your children. Phonics Hero, that's a great one that I have a lot of my parents that use at home. Raz Kids, normally that is through school, but you can also get a membership on the parent aspect. So before you go buying Raz Kids or any of the programs, just make sure that your child's school doesn't already have a membership that you can just automatically use without having to purchase it again. But all of these resources are absolutely amazing. I've had a lot of parents, a lot of families. I've used a lot of them. Phonics.com is one of my favorite websites to use. And so all of these websites will help instill that your child is successful in the area of phonics. The next area we're going to cover is phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is just being able to hear, identify, and manipulate sounds in the language. So at this point, they're able to blend sounds and create rhyming words. So if I said the word cat, another child might say hat or mat. Just being able to delete a letter, replace a letter, substituting sounds for different vowels or different endings. At this point in time, this is a fun way for kids to do it with anything. It's fall for a little bit longer, I hope, but A lot of my kids have been using leaves outside to spell words. And so I send home a sight word list. I send home 5 words a week, 1 word per day. And so what they do is they build words outside, they build words using just things around their house. And then parents send in a picture at the end of the week of each day. And so that is just a fun way for kids to get outside, build words, play with things, and learn at the same time. It's important for kids to be able to segment words because they have to be able to eventually write the sounds that they hear in words and transfer phonemes to graphemes. And we'll go through the difference a little bit more here in a few minutes. Kids who lack or have a difficult time with phonemic awareness skills and being able to segment words fluently, that can limit their ability to write. And so if they have a harder time with different sounds and being able to identify them, they're going to have a harder time being able to write them and then read them and identify those later on. It is extremely important, like I said, because this is a huge skill that kids need to have in their tool belt. It's one of the first steps for them to build their confidence with words and sounds. So with phonemic awareness, anything you can do to keep them engaged and excited about sounding words out, rhyming. Most kids at this stage love nursery rhymes or anything that they can make a game. So another thing you can do is getting a little ball. Most parents have them around the house. A little ball, and what you can do is you can sit in a circle or sit in front of your child and practice rhyming words. So we call it rhyme bounce. And so what you do is you can sit in front of your child and you say the word farm, and your kiddo has to think of another word. And when you say the word, you bounce the ball to them. And they think it's a fun way of not only playing with their parents, but also doing something and learning at the same time. So we're going to take a look at all of these different skills to practice. Some of them we won't spend too much time on because they're pretty self-explanatory, but others we will spend a little bit of time on. Discriminating, so this is the ability for kids to identify sounds that have the same beginning sound or ending sound. So if you can play I Spy, I Spy is a great game to do for just about anything. If it's like the picture says, is being able to identify something that begins with the same sound. This is a great one to do when you're driving home from school, practice, dinner, wherever you may be, just periodically. So they think that it's a game, kind of like the alphabet game when you're driving on road trips or things like that. Counting, so this is just being able to identify how many sounds are in a word or how many syllables are in a word. And so what most of your children probably know is tapping it out with their fingers. So for example, like the word frog, most kids would either clap it g, or some kids will tap it where each letter is its own finger tap. Rhyming, like I said, this one's pretty self-explanatory. We've talked about the rhyming before. This is another skill just to make sure that your kiddo was really strong in. Alliteration, just being able to create a list of words with 2 or more of the initial sound. These are the fun tongue twisters that most people get all tangled up with, silly sentences, things like that, just so that way your kids are having fun rather than just trying to get frustrated and you're dealing with your angry child who doesn't want to learn or do the reading portion. So just being able to create it where it's more of a fun thing rather than a chore or homework that they have to do every day. Blending, we talked about just being able to form words with sounds. So you can do this one anywhere. Like I said, another great thing is I Spy or I Am Thinking. I Am Thinking is kind of like a mystery game. So you can say, I am thinking of a word that starts with B that rhymes with mat. And they have to take the word you said and delete the letter and add the letter you told them. And so just by doing different fun and interactive ways of learning and getting engaged, it doesn't always have to be, at the kitchen table or wherever you do work with your children. It can be anywhere on your way home, like I said, from school, practice, and it doesn't have to be the whole time. It can be periodically throughout that time. Segmenting we talked about. And so segmenting is the skill to be able to verbally isolate the syllables or the sounds in the words. Another tool that you can have your kiddo use for segmenting is called eloquent boxes. And eloquent boxes are, you can Google this too. Eloquent boxes are a table. It looks like a table. And on the table, your kid writes the letter or the sound in the box, and they are able to take the word and break it into the sounds. Manipulating this is, like I mentioned, deleting, adding, or substituting sounds into words. This is a skill that you can do anytime, even with high schoolers with bigger words, longer words, just so that way they're still mastering that foundational skill. Specific tools to help your child. So at home, nursery rhymes is a big one. Making your own rhyming words. A lot of families, what they'll do is they'll have a rhyme book, and you can just get a notebook. You can staple a stack of papers together, whatever you want to do in the rhyme book. And so what a lot of families do is each page, they'll have a master word. And so the master word is their base word that they are trying to create more rhyming words off of. And so what most kids will do, or most parents and families will do, is they'll pick a page together and they'll practice different ways with the alphabet to add words, delete words, or add letters and delete letters. Here's some more resources. So these resources, like I said, are for phonemic awareness, and these ones, the Reading Advice Hub is an amazing resource for all areas of reading, not just specifically phonemic awareness, but every area. I strongly suggest all parents look at that. The Reading Advice Hub has everything kindergarten through 12th grade. And what there is PowerPoints, worksheets, specific area, like areas for parents to work on a skill with their kiddo at home. Also a plethora of information. Reading Rockets, that one was before too, and that is another great one. And Haggerty is a great, it's an amazing program that parents can use at home. A lot of teachers and schools, especially in Colorado, use Haggerty because it aligns with our Common Core state standards. And so Haggerty, 9 times out of 10, I'm sure most kiddos in kindergarten through 12th or kindergarten through 2nd grade use Haggerty in their classroom. So I would always ask their parents to talk to their teacher about extra resources, because Haggerty will help so much with their focus, their attention, just being able to really understand the word and the sounds that are associated with the word. Vocabulary. Vocabulary, I don't just mean if knowing what the word bottle means or knowing what the word house means. Vocabulary is not only being able to understand what is said to them, but being able to express themselves. So your child's oral vocabulary is based upon what is being said to them, which is their receptive language and their receptive vocabulary, versus using these words to make themselves understood. So when they're upset, frustrated, angry, they're able to express themselves. Receptive vocabulary is the language that they're able to understand. So receptive language and receptive vocabulary will change throughout time. When you talk to a child who is under the age of 2, they're not going to be able to understand the same things that your high schooler would be able to understand. And that's because their expressive or receptive language hasn't fully developed yet. Expressive vocabulary, this is that, like I said, the ability for them to communicate. So speaking, writing, being able to vocalize how they're feeling or what they want to say to you. Expressive vocabulary is more difficult for children to develop than receptive skills because expressive vocabulary is in the part of the brain in children that doesn't fully develop till they're in their upper teens. And so it's very difficult for some kids, even high schoolers, to express how they're feeling. So that is because of their expressive vocabulary. Building your child's vocabulary. So like I said, most of these parents probably know, but reading with your child, introducing new words, taking your children somewhere, whether it's the zoo, the park, anywhere that you can take them, just so that way they can get more exposure to words and people and all of the different sounds that they may hear. This book right here is called The Word Collector. This is one of my favorite books to use for any grade level. I have a bunch of co-teachers that I know that work in high school that use this book even with their high schoolers. This book has so many different vocabulary words that when you're reading it, even parents, teachers, you'll forget about these words. And so just being able to not only refresh your vocabulary and being able to realize that you can use these different words with your children rather than just basic small words. Books, stories, and tales. So this is a great one to do. So just being able to read words, read with your children. So whether it's at home right before bed, after dinner, just any chance you can to read to your child will exponentially help their oral vocabulary and being able to, for children to not only hear the word, but be able to understand how to use that word. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know why that did that, but why is it important? So it's important to read with your children at least a minimum of 20 minutes a night. I know that may seem a lot in everybody's busy day, but it has a huge impact on your child's education. So starting in kindergarten, if a student is reading 20 minutes a day, then they will hear 1,800,000 words per year. They have read 815 hours, by the grade of 6th grade. And on tests, they will likely be able to score better than 90% of their peers. And that's with a kiddo who's reading 20 minutes a day. If a kiddo is reading 5 minutes a day, let's say on the way home from school, they're only going to be able to be exposed to 282,000 words. So that is a huge drop from 15 minutes a day for reading. They will have read 212 hours by the end of 6th grade, and they'll likely to score about 50% better than their peers. If you look right here, student C, who only reads 1 minute a day, they're only exposed to 8,000 words per year. So while life gets busy and your kiddo might be extremely tired one night coming home from wherever, and you don't get to read that night, is it going to make a huge difference? No, as long as it doesn't become a trend or a pattern, and it's just once every now and then, that's okay. Life happens, like I said. But the drop from 20 minutes a day to 1 minute a day is a huge and a very impactful detriment to your child's education. So that's why it's extremely important to read with your kids every day. So I want you in the chat, if you wouldn't mind telling me roughly how many minutes a night you read with your children or your child, and if you can increase that, how you will increase that, and why you think you should increase it. So something that I'm seeing in the chat that I just want to address is even if your kiddo is big enough to read on their own, we're going to talk about this a little more too, but even if your child is big enough to read on their own, it's still very important that even if they don't want to, that periodically, whether it's once a week, twice a week, however it may be, that you check in with your child and have them read to you. This helps you know that your kid understands the foundations of reading. They know when to stop at periods, grammar, being able to identify unknown words, context clues, all sorts of things. So just being able to read with your kid, like I said, even if they're big, they might fight you on it, but as long as it's a fun thing, it is really important and beneficial, because if you don't have your kid read to you or your children read to you, unfortunately, you're not going to know if they actually understand what they're reading. A person can read all day long, but if you don't understand what you read, you won't take any meaning from it and it won't have any impact on you. So being able to really understand and derive meaning from what you're reading is a huge tool to take further in their education.
Shelby, there was a question too, and maybe some other families can speak to this, but if you have really large families, what do you recommend for helping them get their out loud reading time each day?
So a great thing that I recommend to all my families that are bigger at school is round robin. And so what that is it's called round robin or popcorn reading. And so you can pick a book that all of the kids can read, depending on the age ranges, of course. But if your kids are all roughly around the same age range, a year or two apart, what you can do is you can get a book and you can all, parents included, pass the book around and all take turns reading. And this helps not only for them to read to somebody and build their confidence, but being able to listen to somebody else tell a story as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so then, okay. Another great thing to do at home to help with their students' vocabulary, children's vocabulary, is using repeated words and phrases in different ways. So if you are singing a song, just being able to, maybe you say the wrong word and see if your child picks up on it. Or maybe you throw in a silly word to see if they pick up on it. And then they have to identify what was different. And then at that point, they're using context clues from their brain to realize that that's not right. And that is not the normal sound, phrase, song that I know. So just being able to change anything that they hear to make it more approachable and more encouraging, and have them exposed to new vocabulary. So how can you help them at home? This is a big table. There's a lot of different things on here. And so there's 9 ways to help your kids' vocabulary at home. And all of these you can use any grade level, kindergarten through 12th grade. So the first and foremost thing is having conversations. The more you talk to your child about their day, they're able to explain details, feelings, reactions, events involving your children. So whether it's making dinner one night or baking cookies or hot chocolate on a cold winter day, having your children work with you and explaining how to make something, whether it's measuring with measuring cups, teaspoons, mixing, any type of thing like that, to get them more involved and exposed to different vocabulary that they might not normally hear. Using big words. So this is a huge thing that a lot of parents are scared to do, especially with younger children, usually K-5, kindergarten through 5th grade, is parents can still use bigger descriptive words. In preschool, kindergarten, young age, yes, you can definitely use the small words that they can actually understand. But once they get past 1st grade, what you can do is you can start adding more descriptive words, more adjectives, things that can be used to replace the word and create a synonym for it. So that way they can realize that if my friend says that they were heartbroken, that I know that that means that they were upset. So all of these different things are great ways to encourage your children. to readings and encouraging them to grow their vocabulary. So you can see different cars when you go outside, telling stories, all sorts of things like that. Each box has an example of how you can do this at home with your children. So that way, after the presentation, you can take this and then you can take it and do whichever activity you'd like to do with your children. Another thing you can do with your child at home is previewing the words with them before they read. So if they're reading, what you can do is look ahead before they start reading for words that they may not know, or that might be really interesting. That can be anything from a castle if they're young and they don't know what a castle is, to protons and neutrons in science in high school. It can range in a variety of different ways. And so just being able to work with your child and recognize interesting and unfamiliar words allows you to tell your child or your children about what the word means. So when they're reading, they don't come across an unknown word and they don't derive any meaning to it. Another great game or fun thing to do is wordplay. So this can be anything from Simon Says to hide and seek. So what we do for Simon Says is I say, I want you to stand beside your chair. So then they understand that positional words and how they impact what the character or what the person is doing. Ordinal words, so just being able for kids to understand that first, second, third chronological order. You can put things in backwards order and have them unmix them. Most kids like to cut, glue, make a mess with their papers. So what you can do is on a piece of paper, you can draw different things and have them put them in order. Most families use animals. So you'll have like a baby frog, a tadpole, and it will go throughout its life stage until it's at its final stage. And the child has to put them in the correct order and identify which one comes first, second, third, so on and so forth. This is just another example of how you can play with positional word games at home. Put your fork above the plate. And this is a fun way because kids will realize that if you put something flat on a circle or a ball, it'll roll off, and then that can encourage a conversation about why that happens to expand their vocabulary. Here are some more resources for helping with vocabulary specifically. So Spelling City is a great one. That's one of my favorites. Spelling City allows you to not only understand the vocabulary word, but take it and being able to spell it afterwards. So taking the phonetics and the vocabulary meaning of the word and spelling it in its own. All right, comprehension. I saw some parents bringing up comprehension in the chat. So comprehension is does not just mean that you understand what you read. So comprehension is being able to understand and talk about text. So comprehension can be anything from what color were her shoes to explain how the main character felt during X, Y, and Z. Being able to understand what you read is the only way that you're going to understand and grow your vocabulary. How to improve reading comprehension? This is a big question that I get asked a lot. Your child may be a rock star at reading. They have great accuracy, great fluency, but maybe they struggle with understanding or remembering specific or key details in a story. And so what you can do is like I said, have your child read out loud. This gives them the chance to go slower and process the information. The more that your child goes slow, especially at the beginning with reading, it gives them time to realize what the words are saying and why they're important. The next one is reading books at the right level. So in the resource packet that I provided, there's a handout and it goes through different stages or different parts of identifying the right book for your child. So your child should be able to read a book and recognize 90% of the words without any help. If you are working and solving words more with your child than they are, it is too hard. They should be doing the majority of the reading. Now with younger kids, obviously parents are going to do the majority of the reading until they master their skills and figure out how to read. But once they have figured out how to read, by the end of kindergarten or beginning of first grade, they should be reading 90% of the words in a story. Reread the text. So by the beginning of third grade, your child should be able to read at least 90 words per minute. While that might seem like a lot, a word can be anything from the word quickly to the word a. Words range in a variety of different lengths, but they should be able to read 90 words per minute. If your child is not reading 90 words per minute, what you can do at home is reread the same text over and over and over again to the point where it seems like they have memorized it, because that will help build their confidence and their speed and their accuracy. The next thing you can do is supplement their class reading. So another thing you can do, like I said, is talk to your child's teacher. They'll most likely send anything they need that you need home, extra practice sheets, anything to help them get extra practice at home. Talk about what they're reading. So this is called verbal processing, and this helps children remember and think about the different themes, parts of a story. So main characters, setting, plot, all of those, or why the author maybe wrote or may have wrote something, or why the author wanted to describe dolphins. Anything that they read about, talking to them before, during, and after about anything that they read, whether it's feelings, events. This helps encourage reading comprehension, because then they're recalling upon information from the story itself. Like I said, reading comprehension should happen throughout the entire text, before, during, and after. So these are some easy questions that you can ask periodically. It's super important when you're asking reading comprehension questions while you're reading with your child to not make them yes or no questions. Your child should be able to explain or use multiple words to answer the question. If they're only answering with yes or no, you really don't know if they have a true understanding of the text. Tools to help. So making connections, text to text, text to self, or text to world. So if you read this, or if you see the movie Monsters, Inc., you can read the book with your child and compare them and make connections between the two. Or you can read two different books about frogs and you can compare them, whether it's Frog and Toad and a real frog book. You can do anything to make connections. Visualizing, this is a strategy to help encourage what's happening and picturing what they're reading. Questioning, that one's pretty simple. Inferencing, so this is reading between the lines. So thinking about why a character maybe did something if the text doesn't explicitly say why they did it. So this could be why the problem happened. Why do they think this problem happened? How do you think this problem is going to be solved beforehand? Anything like that, so that way your kids can think outside of the box rather than limit themselves to just reading exactly what the text says. Determine important ideas, so just key details that support the author's purpose in writing the story or the text. And then synthesizing, or putting all the pieces together. This is also summarizing. Synthesizing, they're just being able to take all the information from the story or the text and put it all together to a way that makes sense. So how can you be a better reader? So what you can do is, like I said, these are some extra questions that you can ask your child at home. These questions are truly based upon fiction. So fiction is anything that is imaginary. So princess stories, anything that isn't real. Nonfiction is when it's all real, about animals, anything that you see on a day-to-day basis. Resources to help your child with this specific area. So Prodigy. Prodigy, most kids have used at home or at school specifically for math. Prodigy has just released an English-based program on their website that is extremely super fun for the kids. They love to play it. Prodigy is a great app that you can use kindergarten through 12th. And it just really, they think it's a video game, but it actually is prompting them to answer questions as they are beating against the monsters and the other people that they run into. Book Adventure, that's another wonderful one that you can take a book and you can dive deeper into it. It will break it up into vocabulary words, worksheets, comprehension questions. Readability. This one is one of my favorite apps, and this one I strongly encourage all parents to use at home. Readability is an app that you can use second through 12th grade. And so this one is what they're doing is they are picking out a text, and their goal is to unlock as many stories as possible. So what they're doing is they are reading the story, and what will happen is it will prompt them to do different tasks. So the first task is they read it by themselves, trying to master it. Once they have tested themselves, then they try and beat the level. And so how they beat the level is they have to read the story to a parent or a guardian, somebody, an adult around them. What the parent or guardian is doing is they are marking words that maybe they didn't get right, or things that they missed in the story. And then they have to go back. They have to get a score of, I believe it's 93% or higher in order to beat the level. So their goal is to beat as many. And the nice thing about readability is it also asks comprehension questions. So it's not only, they're not only reading, they're practicing their fluency, they're building their vocabulary, and they're doing comprehension questions. Fluency. So fluency is the person's ability to be able to read with speed and accuracy. So how many minutes or how many words per minute should your child be reading? In first grade, by the end of first grade, your child should be reading about 60 words per minute. By the end of second grade, they should be reading about 90 words per minute. And by the end of third grade, they should be reading about 115 words per minute. So the more exposure they have to the vocabulary, understanding the phonics and the phonemic awareness of words and English language, it can really help your child master and read their reading minute goal. So what causes a student to have difficulty with reading fluency? So if you ever struggled with reading fluency, I want you to think about why you struggled. Everybody who has struggled with reading has a reason why. And it's not just because they didn't like it. So if you ever struggled in your life with reading, I want you to think of why. And if you feel comfortable in sharing in the chat why, go ahead. If you don't, that's completely fine as well.
And Shelby, real quick while people are putting that in, was Readability an app or?
So Readability is it's not they're working on making an app. They haven't made an app yet though, at least to my knowledge, but Readability is just a website that you can go to. You do have to pay for it, but it's completely worth it. I've seen huge growth in children who use it consistently on a day-to-day basis. So if you are in a financial spot to get Readability, I would highly encourage it.
Thank you for sharing that. And it sounds like that would be something you could use your funds for families.
Yes. All right. All right, so what we're going to keep going, but so all of children who may have difficulty with reading fluency, so that's maybe they get stuck on a word and they just can't get past it no matter how many times they try. Reading fluency is any word they're able to identify and read correctly. So the more you expose your child to text, stories, words, anything like that, it will give them the opportunity to practice every chance they get. A child's process of written language may also have a slower impact and a slower rate of speed because of their reading fluency. And if you think about at the beginning where I talked about how written language and reading go together and they kind of hold hands, a child's going to process the written language at a slower rate, and they're also going to end up taking that slower rate of speed of written language and taking that into their reading fluency. So it's really important that you work with your child not only on reading, but the writing aspect as well. Teaching your child to read at home. So like I said, understand that it is not a test. It's, let's see. There we go. Okay. So understanding that it's not a test and it's not a race. Like I said, it takes time. And the more practice and exposure.
Did we just lose?
We lost her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm
guys,
sure
I'm
she'll be-
back. I don't know what happened. Sorry, I'm here. Hold on, give me 1 second. I'm not sure what just
Excellent.
happened.
I don't know, guys.
Can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened.
Mhm.
But so one of the things that you can do at home to encourage and have your child enjoy reading is create a quiet and a comfortable reading environment. So a lot of parents will have a specific part of their house or a specific room. Maybe it's your family room, your living room, sitting on the floor, on the couch, wherever it is. Anywhere that's quiet. So making sure that the TV's off, there's no background noise, nothing that can distract the reader from getting distracted and looking up from the text. What you want to avoid is your child looking up from a text, because if they look up, what they're doing is then they have a harder time tracking and figuring out where they were because they lost the spot in the text. Making reading visible, so having books at home for different purposes, like I said, cookbooks, newspapers, novels, internet, and even instruction manuals for a kid to be able to read those will help them later down in life. Share books every day, so planning reading into your daily routine if it's not already. Like I said, talk about the books, don't just read them, and sit and listen. Don't do chores around the reader. I know it is so hard. Parents have a million things to do and then some, but just really taking the time to focus on your child or your children and having them read so that way you can better understand, oh, I realize that my child keeps missing words that have E at the end, or, oh, I have a child that keeps skipping words because they have a vowel team of OU in them and they don't know the sound OU. So just being able to really focus and pinpoint areas so that way you can help them more at home. So what do you do if your child is stuck?
In the meantime, while we're waiting, do you have any announcements or anything to share with us as a group, Melissa? Since the majority of our families are in this session, or any things that you want us to all know?
There's only 2 sessions left after today. So if you haven't gotten your 6 hours, please make sure that you get on the next 2 sessions next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. And also report cards will be due mid-January. And I'll be sending out the schedule for the spring in December, early December, so you guys have that schedule. Okay. I think Shelby's back.
Yeah, she is. Thank you for that, Melissa.
You're welcome.
I am so sorry. I have no idea what's happening. I am so sorry.
No
This-
problem at all.
This doesn't normally happen, so I'm not sure what the flare up is here. So, all right, so I will start from where my screen froze. What to do if your child gets stuck. So the first thing that you can do is don't tell your child the word. Let them sound them out. The more practice they get, even if they have a harder time and they keep getting it wrong after wrong after wrong, after 3 tries of them trying, and if they still aren't getting it right, after that 3rd time, that's when parents should jump in and help. So what word might fit here? What word would make sense? What does the picture look like? Does that help you? Anytime you can look at the picture or words around it to help your child understand and think about words that may fit into the sentence like a puzzle. So how to use strategies at home. This is one of the examples that I use. So for example, like looking at this sentence. So the child John could not figure out this word right here. After a few tries, this is when the parent prompted, what is the first sound? Then John identified that the first sound was H. It across the grass. So they're still trying to figure it out. They're not giving up, but they're still trying. But they're trying with your prompts. If you don't prompt, what'll happen is most kids will just keep on reading and they'll bypass this missing word and they'll have no understanding of what that sentence meant. So being able to prompt your child in different ways, helping them figure out the missing word will really help them understand what the vocabulary is, what it means, and what it looks like. So what can you do to help? There are many things you can do to help your child when they're reading. One of the big things is that making reading fun, like I've mentioned. Reading should never seem like a punishment or a chore. You can do games, read books, read online books, comics. You can get a newspaper from the grocery store one day and you can talk about comics in the back of them. Anything that you can do differently for your child to see text in a different way is very encouraging, and it not only shows them that they can do it, but that you are also excited about reading. If parents seem excited and parents are excited about it, the children are also going to say, oh, I want to read just and learn all of these things too, like my parents. So the more that you show them that reading is fun, the more that they will think that reading is fun. Providing choice of different reading materials. So no 2 children are the same, and no 2 children read the same. So one of your children may love fiction stories. Your other child may absolutely hate fiction stories, but love nonfiction stories. So being able to understand that all of your children or your child may fall into spurts where they don't like that book anymore, or they don't like that type of book. That's completely fine. Everybody changes throughout their lives. But just making sure that you're staying up to date with what your child is excited about, so that way you can bring that into the reading as well. As a parent or a caregiver, another thing that you can do is show that you read too. Like I said, the more that you show that you're excited by developing your own vocabulary, sharing different interesting facts that you've learned, anything that you can do to show your child that you are also excited about reading will help them understand and be extremely excited to also do it and to do it with you. Asking a lot of questions. So this also, like I said, comes back to reading comprehension. So the more questions you ask, the more it's easier for your child to understand the different parts of a story and realize if your child absolutely did not like that story or they love the story, and any new facts, any new information they learned, anything that they noticed in the pictures, the illustrations, the story as a whole. Some reading activities. So there's so many reading activities that you can do for new activities, new vocabulary, and opinions. So one thing that you can do is you can go read the book and then go see the movie. Shrek is a popular one for younger kids. You can do any story. Most books have a movie at this point in time, or at least a show. So what you can do is you can read the story. Always read the story first with your child and then take them or watch the movie. By doing this, they have to recall on information that they read before rather than them recalling on information from a movie. Learning new words is a competition. So challenging your child to find a longer word. This is a fun game. For a lot of families they do this at home. So what they do is they'll have a word of the week where you choose a new word. That can be a tricky word or a sight word. And what you can do is you can define it. Now, defining it, I don't mean pulling up dictionary.com and having the full dictionary definition. Making it into a definition or an understanding that your child can understand. So how you explain a word to a 6-year-old is going to be much different than how you explain the definition of a word to a 12-year-old or a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old. Being able to change the words and alternate them based off of maybe they have spelling words that they have at school or vocabulary words that they are also working on at school. The more you can expose them, the better. Encouraging them to write their own text. So what you can do is anytime that there's like a long weekend or a break at the end of the day, encouraging them to just write down anything that they want. If it's a story about their day, if they want to write a story about a movie they saw, anything they can, because what they're doing is they're recalling on information and then they're taking the words that they are trying to write and segmenting them into their sounds to create full sentences. Reading with younger siblings. So I know that a lot of you, based upon the survey at the beginning, have multiple children. So any chance you can get to have your older child read to the younger children is a great way for not only the older child to have a sense of accountability, but encourage them to share and instill the excitement into their younger siblings. So tools to help your child. So I'm not going to go through all of these. These are just a few that I've used in the past that really help kids understand. So what I've done is I print off all of these and I hang them around or I put them on note cards or flashcards. And so each different one, there's a different dog that's associated with it, but each dog has a job. And so their jobs, like this one is vocabulary Victor. So he's trying to figure out what the words mean in the text. So just being able to give a visual representation or an acronym or to driving meaning or finding how to do it with your child is a great way, because you can always say vocabulary Victor wants you to find a word you don't know on this page. And so what they know is they're trying to search on the page for a word that they didn't understand the meaning of. Types of questions you could ask here. What does the word tell us about the character? What does that suggest? So on and so forth. Like I said, I included these all in the presentation so that way you can look back when you're working with your child at home and have all of the skills and all of the tools that you need. This is another one, Rex the Retriever, so identifying key details. So like I said, all of these have different specific goals that they're looking for. And so what a lot of parents will do is they will, let me go back here, they will have all of these printed off or on a piece of paper. And what they'll do is while they're reading is they will point to each different dog. And so the child or the student is, their job is to know what the dog is and find the information that that dog needs. And so if they feel like they're helping something else and supporting the animal, the dog, whatever it may be, it will give them a sense of accomplishment, knowing that they successfully completed the job that Rex the Retriever wanted them to complete. These are some more questions that you could ask while you're reading with your child or your children. They will, they will increase with rigor. So obviously you're not going to ask your first grader which paragraph tells you X, Y, and Z. Most of the time, what you're going to do is you're going to gear your questions towards the age group or the developmental skill of your child. And so usually when you start talking about paragraphs come in about 3rd grade is when they fully identify and understand what a paragraph is and what information is enclosed in it. This is another one. I'll skip through these because you guys have them. But like I said, all of the dogs have a different job. And so it's important to make sure that you are following the developmental skills of your children. So for example, like I said, you're not going to ask your child to explain what happened in a paragraph or writing a specific advert for a book or writing an essay. You're not going to ask your younger child any of that because they're not going to have any idea what you're saying. You're going to ask questions that they are going to understand. So just being able to understand that all of the different dogs, like I'm showing you, come through with different skills at different skill points. I'll skip to this part. All right, so, let me get through these. So reading every day. Children, like I said, should read at least a minimum of 20 minutes a day. They should be reading with somebody who can help them with tricky words and make sure, like I said, that they really truly understand the text. When listening to your child, like I've mentioned before, it's important to ask questions along the way. So this helps encourage reading comprehension. And you can start these reading comprehension skills as young as possible, whether it's identifying what color shoes the main character was wearing or who the main character was, things like that, so that way they can understand that when they're reading, they have a purpose behind reading the actual text. If your kiddo is not enjoying the book at all, something that you can do, that you should do, is ask why they don't like it. For example, they might tell you right off the bat that it's way too hard. And if they're expressing that it's too hard, chances are it really is. Like I've mentioned, they should be able to read 90% of the words correctly by themselves. So just a quick little recap, and then we'll get into some questions. So to support your child to achieve their reading potential, what you should try and do, like I've mentioned, is make time for reading every day, 20 minutes, if not more. Asking questions before, during, and after. Having a special place for reading. So like I said, it can be anywhere in your house, just somewhere quiet and comfortable. Making sure you have a variety of different reading materials, fiction, nonfiction, shopping lists, recipes, showing that you enjoy reading and that what you've learned as you've read. And then taking part in activities, like I said, going to the movies, going to the library. Libraries still have so many free read alouds, so many free activities for you to take your kiddos to as long as you have a library card. And the library does a great job about encouraging kids to read and finding all the games and resources. And like I said, making sure it's seen as fun and enjoyable rather than a chore. So these are some more resources for reading fluency specifically. Read Naturally, again, that was one that I had talked about before. Another great one that's similar to Read Naturally is called 1 Minute Reader. This is, again, one that you have to pay for, but it has the same end goal as Read Naturally. Perfect. So with that, I will take any questions.
Shelby, I'm going to throw one out there that was kind of popping up earlier in the thread. First of all, there's been lots of great ideas from other families. So if you guys want to look back and read those in the chat. But there was some question about what if your kiddos lost confidence or they're feeling anxious about reading, how to help with that.
So yeah, and that is, it's difficult to come back from that. Is it impossible? Absolutely not. So what you can do is, chances are the reason they don't want to read or they don't like it is because they aren't confident. And so confidence comes from, maybe for a while you take a break from reading an actual book for their reading time. Maybe during this time you're building sentences with them. You're having them practice writing things. You're encouraging them to read in a different way where they're still reading. So even if they don't have an actual book in their hands, actually reading, sentences are the same thing. You can change the complexity of your sentences to the point where maybe they have to read a sentence and draw a picture, or maybe they have to read the sentence and act it out with their brother or sister. So they're doing different things to realize that they can actually read it and slowly build the confidence back up. Because unfortunately, once they're down here with their reading confidence, it's a stair step to get them back. And any chance you get to work with teachers to get the staircase going, chances are the teacher already has implemented things at school that you can also do the exact same thing at home. So that way it's the same playing field across the board.